What you're about to hear might make you look at your pet differently. If you've ever caught your cat staring into a corner, unmoving, as if it sees something you don't, maybe it really does. This isn't just another scary story. It happened in Vermont, USA. A man named Ray adopted a black cat, sleek, quiet, and eerily alert. From the first night, Ray noticed something strange. The cat never blinked, even when directly lit, even in sleep. Its eyes remained wide open. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when the cat would suddenly growl low guttural while staring into the empty corners of the room. No movement, no intruder, just empty space. At least, that's what Ray thought. This story isn't folklore. It's been shared, reposted, and mysteriously removed from Reddit, whispered in niche threads of true creepy stories and cautiously avoided by popular Let's Read channels. Why? Because the story never really ended. Ray first noticed it the third night. The cat, he had named it Milo, was perched on the windowsill, completely still, not asleep, not relaxed, but frozen spine, tense head tilted, and those glassy yellow eyes wide open, unblinking. At first, he thought it was just the breed. Some cats don't blink as much. Maybe Milo was just focused. But then Milo growled, not a hiss, not a meow. A deep, rumbling growl aimed not at the window, not at Ray, but at the corner of the room. An empty corner. Ray turned on all the lights. There was nothing there, and yet Milo didn't stop growling. Ray had owned cats his whole life. He'd read his fair share of scary stories, heard all the typical creepy stories about animals sensing things humans couldn't. Ghosts, demons, invisible presences. He even remembered one true horror story from Reddit, a tale about a golden retriever that barked at a closet for 5 nights before the owner found a human tooth behind the drywall. But Milo didn't bark. Milo didn't yowl. Milo just stared, unblinking, watching something Ray couldn't see. He tried to brush it off, but the behavior continued. Every night around 2:33 a.m., Milo would walk slowly into the living room, sit in the same spot, and fixate on the far right corner where the ceiling met the 2 walls. Then the growling would start. At first, it lasted a few seconds. Then it stretched into minutes. And then on the 7th night, Milo did something new. He arched. His back twisted unnaturally, head snapping toward Ray like a puppet on a string, and he growled while maintaining eye contact. Ray backed out of the room and slept in his truck. The next morning, the house felt different. Not colder, just heavier, like the air had gained mass. Ray checked the room where Milo had growled. Nothing. He grabbed a flashlight and climbed into the attic. Dust, old boxes, spider webs. But as he turned to leave, he spotted something wedged behind an old lamp. A photograph, black and white. It showed the interior of the very room he'd just been in. Same furniture, same layout. Except there was a figure in the photo, small, blurry, standing in the exact corner Milo had stared at. Its head was tilted and its eyes were bright white. Ray dropped the photo and left the attic. That night, he didn't sleep. He opened his laptop, searched cats staring into corners. Then he went deeper into stories from Reddit. Let's Not Meet true creepy stories, and even YouTube rabbit holes with Let's Read narrations about cats acting strangely before their owners encountered things, paranormal, possession, time slips, interdimensional visitors. The stories varied, but one theme echoed through all of them. The animals always saw it first. By week 2, Milo's behavior escalated. He began pacing from corner to corner, sometimes mowing at the wall like it was whispering back. Ray tried everything: sage smudging, motion-activated cameras, even brought in a local priest who politely blessed the house and then left in a hurry after Milo hissed at him non-stop. That same night, Ray checked the footage from one of his cameras. At 2:33 a.m., the frame glitched, and for 1.7 seconds, a tall, thin figure appeared in the corner facing the wall. Then it vanished. No noise, no motion trigger. Ray rewatched it over and over. Each time, Milo appeared to look directly at the camera, as if he knew Ray was watching. By now, Ray had stopped going to work. He barely ate. The world outside faded into haze. He was consumed not just by fear, but by curiosity. There had to be others. There had to be similar cases. He posted to Reddit under the title, "My cat won't blink, and I think he's guarding me from something." He included the photo, a low-res still from the video. Within an hour, it was removed. Violation of reality-bending content, but messages started pouring in. One user wrote, "This isn't just a scary story, man. This is a true horror story. My cat did the same thing before he vanished. Not died, vanished." Another said, "Look into the Vermont archives. There's an old wilderness story about a man and a blind cat that never blinked. Same town, same timeline." Ray dug deeper. He contacted the Vermont Historical Society. The archivist didn't say much, but she did send him a scanned page from a 1974 local paper, "Blind Cat Becomes Town Symbol After Owner's Disappearance." Neighbors say the cat stared at the same wall for 3 days after the man vanished. The animal then stopped moving altogether. Some say it's waiting for him to come back. Ray began losing time. He'd wake up on the floor, sometimes in the backyard, sometimes with dirt under his nails, and no memory of how he got there. But the house was always locked. Milo always in the same spot, staring. Then came the scratching. It started in the walls, then beneath the floorboards, then the ceilings, always at night, always at 2:33. And Milo would growl in response, not at Ray, but with him, like a warning, like protection. Then one night, Ray finally saw it. The figure in the corner. It didn't move, it didn't breathe, but its presence was undeniable. And Milo, for the first time, hissed. The creature cocked its head, and for the first time in weeks, Ray blinked. When he opened his eyes, the figure was closer, still, silent, but inches from Milo, and Milo didn't blink, didn't back away. He simply growled louder than ever before until the lights burst. The next day, Milo was gone. No trace, no paw prints, nothing. Only a smear of ash where he used to sit, and in the far corner of the living room, a single cat's eye, perfectly preserved. Ray now lives in a different house, different state, but sometimes he still wakes at 2:33 a.m. Sometimes he hears claws on the drywall. Sometimes he swears he sees a flash of yellow in the corner of his room. He no longer owns pets. He never adopted another cat. But the corner, he never looks at it because he knows something is still watching. Weeks passed. Ray's life settled into silence. He no longer spoke to friends. He stopped answering his landlord's texts. Food deliveries were left untouched on the porch. He no longer trusted reflections, nor corners, nor the shadows cast by things unseen. But what he feared most was forgetting what Milo had guarded him from, forgetting what had stepped out of that corner. He started writing. Long nights, curtains drawn, laptop glowing. He typed everything, the growling, the attic photo, the missing minutes, Milo's disappearance. He posted it all on obscure horror subreddits. Our true horror stories, our creepy, our let's not meet. Tagged the posts with true creepy stories and scary horror stories. He expected mockery. Instead, he got silence. His threads were deleted within minutes. No warnings, no comments, just gone. Then one night he got a DM from a user named Wilderness Eyes 88. Your story isn't new. We've been watching the Watchers. You need to get out. Vermont isn't safe. Attached was a link, a password-locked page. Ray clicked. Inside was a document titled The Milo Protocol Field Reports 1984 to 2021. It was a compendium, dozens of eyewitness accounts from backcountry hikers, amateur ghost hunters, even park rangers describing eerily similar behavior in animals, particularly cats near national parks and isolated towns. One ranger's log dated 1996 read, "Campers reported their cat stared into the forest for hours, never blinking. On third night, child vanished from tent. Ranger Davis's body found 5 days later. Cat was sitting next to it purring." Another Alaskan Ranger post, 2 cats taken in as station mascots. Both vanished after 3 weeks of identical behavior, staring, growling at nothing. Staff reported seeing shifting figures behind tree line. Station shut down in 2003. These weren't just creepy park ranger stories, these were warnings. Ray printed everything, pasted notes on his wall, names, dates, patterns. It always began the same, a cat, staring into a fixed spot, growling. Then memory loss. Then disappearance. One story chilled him the most. It came from Reddit, archived by a user named The Story. Doesn't End My Dad disappeared in the 80s. He left a journal, said our tabby Luna wouldn't stop watching the garage door. Every night, 2:33 a.m., same spot. Then one morning, Luna was gone. A week later, Dad was too. The post ended with, "Now my daughter's cat has started doing the same thing." Ray started dreaming again. In one dream, Milo stood on his chest, but Milo had no eyes, just dark, endless sockets. Ray tried to move, but couldn't. From the corner of the room, something approached, not crawling, just existing, filling space. Its voice like soil turning over. The cat saw too much. Ray woke up screaming. There were scratches on his chest. He decided to leave Vermont. But first he visited the local historical society. Inside a file labeled Unexplained Events, local, he found a familiar image. A cat, same posture, same stare. Caption, "Photograph recovered from abandoned cabin near Rutland County, 1971. Ray recognized the background. It was his house. Different furniture, same layout, same corner. Before leaving, he received one more message. No name, no subject, just a file. It was an audio clip. Ray played it, static at first. Then a purring sound. Then a low human whisper. "The story doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the thing behind the walls." He shut his laptop and fled. Ray drove south, long empty highways. Cold winds, nothing but static on the radio. He stopped at a cheap motel in the Catskills, but something followed. He started seeing Milo again. Not the real cat, but images, reflections in car mirrors, a tail slipping behind furniture, eyes in the dark. He found a support group online. Not official, hidden deep in the comments of a Let's Read episode about creepy outdoors stories. A woman named Corinne shared her experience. "My cat was watching something in the trees. I saw it too for a moment, a shape, wrong angles. Since then, every time I close my eyes, I hear purring. My son's drawings changed. He keeps drawing our living room, but with something in the corner." Another user chimed in. "There's a name for them. Not ghosts, not demons, observers. They collect memory like dust." Ray stayed on the move. He traveled from Pennsylvania to Ohio, then Kentucky, chasing stories. He found dozens of true stories like his, each eerily consistent. One man in a national park cabin described his cat circling a spot in the wall for hours. That night, the man found an old photograph of himself, except he was smiling in the picture. He never smiled. And behind him, the same blur, the same shape, always at the edge. Eventually, Ray stopped running. He knew it was inside him now, not a parasite, not a haunting, something worse, a narrative, something that needed to be told. He moved to a cabin near Shenandoah National Park. Quiet, no internet, only a typewriter. He began writing again, this time longhand, documenting everything, cataloging every true creepy story, every sighting, every pattern. He signed each page with the same phrase, "If you see your cat watching the walls, you're already part of the story." Years passed. The manuscript grew, but Ray didn't age the same. His hair remained black. His eyes grew darker. He rarely blinked. Then one day, a hiker found the cabin empty. No Ray, just the stack of pages untouched by dust, and a single photograph pinned to the final chapter. Ray, sitting in his old living room, smiling, Milo in his lap, and in the corner, a shadow, smiling back. Ray had always thought he was alone, until the letters started arriving. No postmarks, no return addresses, just envelopes slipped under doors or placed neatly between the windshield wipers of his truck. Each one contained a single sentence. "We remember your cat. You've seen the corner too. Whiskers are antennas to the dark." Some came with drawings, sketches of unblinking cats' distorted rooms, or shadows crawling up walls. Others contained clippings, true horror stories pulled from old newspapers, reports of missing persons in national parks. Wilderness stories passed down like urban legends. One note struck him the most. It read, "There's a town in Colorado. Every household used to own a cat. None do anymore. No explanation, just an address." Ray packed his bag the next day. He arrived in Silver Pine, Colorado, under thick snowfall. The place looked normal enough, a gas station, a diner, an old church, but something about it felt paused, like the town was holding its breath. Ray checked into the only motel. At the front desk, a middle-aged woman asked him, "You here for work or to see the cats?" She didn't wait for a reply, just handed him the key and whispered, "There's one left." That night, Ray wandered the streets. The snow muffled everything. He passed quiet homes, empty porches, drawn curtains. Then he heard it, a faint meow, followed by the low rumble of a growl. The sound led him to a decaying Victorian house on the edge of town. The door was ajar. Inside, the wallpaper peeled in long strips. Dust danced in the moonlight, and there, in the far corner of the living room, was a cat. Thin, gray, still. It sat perfectly upright. Its eyes never blinked. It was staring at the ceiling corner. Ray called out softly. The cat didn't react. He stepped closer, and the cat growled. Then he saw it. The shadows, not quite shapes, not quite void, just movement that shouldn't be, and then a whisper from the ceiling, words formed from dust and air. They see through the eyes we refuse to close. Ray ran. Back at the motel, he began researching again. He found dozens of connections between cats and phenomena linked to scary stories, creepy stories, and older folkloric warnings dating back to the 1800s. Cats staring at grave sites. Felines circling invisible objects before house fires. Rural towns reporting mass feline migrations before incidents. One blog claimed that in Appalachia, a common saying passed down was, "When the cat stops blinking, move out." A Reddit thread confirmed it. User CornerCrawler67 wrote, "My grandma said cats can track dimensional fractures. Said they watch where time gets thin. I thought she was nuts until I saw mine pacing the attic. That's where I found my great-uncle's boots. He went missing in 1959. Another user replied, "Same here. Our cat vanished after watching a mirror for 3 nights. I've started seeing myself blink in the mirror before I actually do." Ray posted his experience, but like before, the thread vanished within hours. Instead, he received a private message. "Come to White Hollow Woods. Follow the fog. Bring nothing with eyes." He hesitated, but Milo's image haunted him. Every corner he entered, every reflective surface, it always felt like something waited just outside his line of sight, and so he went. White Hollow was remote, a thin trail carved between trees, no signs, no maps. Ray hiked for hours, then the fog arrived, thick, moving against the wind, and with it, sounds. Not voices, memories, his childhood home, his mother's laugh, the ringtone of his old flip phone, all of it leaking from the fog. And then just beyond the haze, a building, a small wooden structure, with a single word etched above the door, curators. Inside the room smelled of cedar and old books. Stacks of journals lined the walls, old cassette tapes, VHS reels, photos of people standing in corners, and cats, dozens of them, frozen in time, eyes wide, watching. A woman sat behind the desk, pale, long silver hair, eyes black as river stones. "You made it," she said. Ray said nothing. She continued. "They are not ghosts, not demons. They are memory collectors. They exist in forgotten corners where stories stagnate. Cats, they see them first. And if you bond with the right one, it will die in your place." Ray swallowed hard. She handed him a file. It was labeled MK Milo Class, a displacement inside photos of Milo, but from decades ago, 1973, 1986, 1999. Each time the same cat, same eyes, same posture, in different places, in different lives, all watching corners. They pass from person to person, the woman said. Carriers of memory, filters of what we cannot face. Ray whispered, "So where is he now?" The woman smiled sadly. "Gone, but not forgotten, which is why he still watches you." Ray collapsed that night. Too much, too fast. He dreamt of Milo, but larger, ancient, with hundreds of eyes, each one blinking individually, each one showing Ray moments from his life, but twisted. Mom's smile rotted, his first kiss bleeding, his future hollow. He woke, screaming. The woman stood by the doorway. "You're changing," she said. "You've seen too much. You're becoming part of the archive." Back in town, Ray tried to write it all down. He created a massive document, thousands of entries all tagged. Creepy outdoors stories, true scary stories, wilderness stories, scary woods stories, stories from Reddit. He uploaded the file to a hidden server, then destroyed his laptop. He now lived with no electronics, no lights after sunset, no mirrors. They say if you drive through Vermont at night, you might see him, an older man sitting on a bench, always near an unlit window, and behind him a shadow with the outline of pointed ears. Ray had become a ghost in his own life. No phone, no internet, no mirrors. He communicated by handwritten notes pinned to bulletin boards, in hiking supply shops, and rickety trail cabins, leaving fragments of his story, like breadcrumbs for those who'd seen what he had. His last known message read, "If your cat watches corners, don't ignore it. Don't stop it. It's not watching for you. It's watching with you." He wandered for months, not aimlessly, but following stories. From Vermont to Utah, then west to Washington, where he found a park ranger named Elena Cho, who'd once submitted a report flagged as inconclusive by the Department of the Interior. In her report, buried in the unindexed pages of a whistleblower archive, Elena described cats observed wandering into restricted wilderness. Each one paused at the same burnt-out ranger station, same time every day. 2:33 a.m., facing the corner. No wildlife followed them in. No cats returned. Ray met her in a dive bar near Mount Rainier. Elena didn't smile, didn't joke, just handed him a folder. Inside Polaroids, one showed a ranger station window, and in the glass a reflection of a cat. Not just any cat, Milo. "I think yours crossed over," Elena said. "And I think he's sending them back," Ray whispered. Why she tapped a page titled Memory Synchronization Theory, Feline Variant. Some animals aren't vessels, they're conduits. When they attach to us, they bridge memory with dimension. But if we forget them, something else fills the gap. Ray left the next morning with coordinates Elena had marked in the Cascades. Cabin 7, Echo Hollow Station, burned down in '87, rebuilt itself in 2021. He hiked for days through snow and silence until he found the structure. It wasn't just rebuilt, it was preserved, like it had never burned. Inside, untouched ranger maps, books on national park stories, and a single chair facing the corner. Sitting on the chair, a notebook. Its cover read, True Creepy Stories, Vol. 2. Ray opened it. Each entry was a story he'd heard or seen before. A ranger swallowed by a mirror in Yellowstone. A child gone missing in Shenandoah after drawing a cat with no pupils. A tourist in Joshua Tree who vanished mid-live stream after saying my cat's eyes just dilated. All accounts he thought were scattered random, but here they were, archived, filed, observed, and in the very last page, a drawing. Milo, eyes fully black, tail curled around something Ray couldn't comprehend, a doorway maybe or a corner folding into itself. Underneath 3 words, don't remember alone. That night, Ray dreamed of Milo again, but this time, Milo spoke. Not in English, not even aloud. In memories, Ray saw flashes, his mother handing him his first kitten, the funeral where Milo sat on his lap, unmoving, the attic, the photograph, the sound the corner made when it breathed. Then Milo turned to him and everything went dark. Ray awoke in the woods. No sign of the cabin, just trees, and paw prints in the snow. Leading deeper, always deeper. He followed. The prints led to a clearing, circular, symmetrical. 11 cats sat in silence, evenly spaced. None moved. All stared into the center. Ray stepped forward. He saw it then. Not a being, not a shadow. An absence, like someone had cut a hole into space. And from that hole came a voice. Not human, not animal, just old. You wrote our stories. Now you must become one. Ray stepped back. The cats did not. They began to blink one after another in sequence. And with each blink, Ray's memories shifted. He forgot his address. He forgot his childhood. He forgot what Milo's purring sounded like. Then silence, and a mirror appeared in the center of the clearing. Not glass, but water. Ray looked in and saw himself standing in his house, holding Milo. Behind him, the corner, smiling. When Ray awoke again, he was in a motel in Oregon. He didn't remember how he got there, but on the bedside table sat a notebook. Same title, True Horror Stories Observer Protocol. Inside only one entry, his, handwritten. He recognized the penmanship, but not the content, because it described everything that had happened, including things he'd never known, things no one else should know. He turned the final page. A small note was tucked in. It read, "We are stories from Reddit, and once you're told, you're part of the telling." Ray burned the notebook, scattered the ashes in the Columbia River, but the stories continued to follow. He tried to live quietly, working night shifts, keeping off the grid. But wherever he went, the corners watched, and sometimes blinked. He tried one last time to speak out. He sent an anonymous audio file to a podcast, Let's Read. His voice trembled. In it, he said, "My name doesn't matter, but if you've ever owned a cat, and it stares into the same corner, night after night, you need to ask yourself one thing. What do you see?" When the cat finally looks away, the episode aired once, then vanished. Some listeners claimed their cats started acting strange after hearing it. Others said their mirrors stopped reflecting them for a second too long. And one Reddit thread now locked simply read, "The cat stopped blinking." I started remembering things that never happened. Ray has not been seen since, but the notebooks appear now and then. In national park ranger stations, at old libraries, inside lost luggage. Each one titled the same, True Scary Stories Vol. X. each one beginning with the same sentence: "The cat never blinked, and neither should you." It wasn't the blinking that haunted Ray now. It was the silence. The kind of silence that felt engineered, not a lack of sound, but the quiet you only hear after something has listened very, very closely and left. Ray started recording himself while he slept. Not out of paranoia, not anymore. It was ritual now. Because the only time he could confirm he was still real was by watching himself remember being alive. The cameras never caught Milo, but the corners, they shifted. You'd need to watch frame by frame to notice. And Ray did. Every night, he slowed one video down to 1 frame per second, then saw it a flicker in the top right corner. A smile, just teeth long and wrong embedded in shadow, not attached to any mouth, not reacting to the light, just there. He took screenshots, uploaded them anonymously to a deep horror thread on Reddit, titled the post, "My cat is gone. I think he took something with him." He tagged it under "True Creepy Stories from Reddit and Let's Not Meet." Within minutes, the post was shadow banned, but not before he got a DM from a user named Echo Corner. For one, they don't want you remembering because remembering stabilizes them. That's how wilderness stories become real. You feed them by telling. Attached was an image. A faded photograph of a ranger station collapsed overgrown. In the window, a cat, eyes glowing. Ray knew the location. It was a national park in Idaho, one that had quietly closed 2 summers ago after reports of environmental instability. Locals called it Whisper Ridge. The files were buried under fake names, but Ray had learned how to find the holes. Inside a whistleblower dump, he found 3 flagged entries. 1. Creepy Park Ranger Story or 4-1 Ranger reports. Hearing voices in the trees spoken in the meows of a cat long dead. 2. Scary Woods Story, Hero 6. A tourist followed his cat into a ravine, never came out. The cat returned 3 days later. Eyeless, 3 Wilderness Story. 112 entire population of feral cats in a region disappeared in one night. CCTV footage erased. The ranger assigned to the zone had also vanished. Ray memorized the coordinates, and he went. He expected dense forests, fog, the classic creepy outdoors story setting, but Whisper Ridge was clean. Too clean. No animals, no wind. The trees didn't sway. They stood still like cardboard cutouts painted in moss. Ray found the ranger cabin mid-afternoon. It stood perfectly still, the door creaking open like it had been waiting. Inside was dust, a collapsed cot, and a wall covered in scratch marks. But at the center of the floor lay a circle, not drawn in chalk or blood, but made of fur. Gray fur, Milo's color, and on a table a typewriter, 1 page inserted. Words already typed, "You've written enough. Now remember for us." Ray turned. The door slammed shut, the windows disappeared, and from the wall, something stepped forward. Not a person, not an animal, not a shadow. Something in between, something shaped like forgetting. It didn't speak, it just hovered. And suddenly Ray remembered everything he had ever forgotten. The exact sound of Milo's first meow. The day his father left and never returned. The look his mother gave him at her final breath. The face he imagined would be his daughter's, if he'd ever had one. All of it poured back in like fire. He collapsed. When he woke, he was outside the ranger station. No sign of the entity, but in his pocket, a flash drive. He checked it on a burner laptop. Thousands of files, each one titled a variation of true horror stories, the ones that blinked. Scary stories told through Cat's wilderness memory. J2300. Milo. They weren't audio or text files. They were eyes. Each file opened to a slow blink. Some fast, some terrified, some unmoving. It wasn't a collection of media. It was a catalog of lives. And Ray. He was the next entry. He tried to delete them, but the files duplicated, then triplicated. Each folder renamed itself Observer, Observer, Observer. Ray screamed and hurled the laptop into the river. It hissed sparks flying, but even after he swore, he heard whispering in the woods. He fled. Back east. He no longer tried to speak to people, because the moment he mentioned Milo, their pupils would dilate, then shrink, and every single person would glance at the nearest corner involuntarily, then forget the conversation. Eventually, Ray stopped running. He returned to Vermont, to the original house. He found it abandoned, half swallowed by trees. Inside, the furniture had fossilized into dust, but the corner, still there, still perfect, still waiting. He sat, lit a candle, and placed a photo of Milo in the center of the room. He whispered, "You blinked for me. I'll blink for them." The candle flickered, and from the corner, two eyes opened. Ray never left the house again. Not truly. The neighbors assumed it was just another recluse, a man who had been broken by lost time and whatever strange thing had followed him. But the house was never still. People claimed to hear scratching in the walls. Lights flickered at exactly 2:33 a.m. And one time during a blackout, a teenager dared his friends to knock on the front door. They swore they saw a cat staring at them from the attic window. It didn't blink. Inside, Ray kept writing. He had no computer now, no internet, just a journal, leather-bound, ink-smeared pages, cracked and torn. Each page held a new memory. Some were his, others weren't. The final thoughts of a missing park ranger in Montana. So, the panicked breathing of a backpacker who vanished into the wilderness in Oregon. A child's last words before vanishing inside a closet in North Carolina. He was writing other people's endings because no one else would, because their cats couldn't write for them. Somewhere along the way, Ray stopped aging. His hair remained the same. His eyes, darker now, no longer blinked as often. He no longer felt cold or hungry. He just existed, a witness, a memory keeper, a curator of the true horror stories that were never meant to be told. He finished the journal one stormy night. The candle he always lit flickered, and the corner began to move. Not physically, but like the paint warped or the shadows deepened. Then a whisper, "You remembered us." Ray nodded. They didn't. The wall opened like skin, and Milo stepped out. His fur shimmered with something ancient. He looked up at Ray, unblinking, and purred. Ray smiled. "Are we done?" Milo sat, tilted his head, and blinked once. Then everything faded. When authorities finally entered the house, they found no sign of Ray, only a cat's paw print burned into the floor, and a single notebook resting beneath a flickering lamp. The title, "True Creepy Stories: The Cat Who Watched the Corners." Inside every page was blank, except one. A message written in clean, perfect script. If your cat stops blinking, don't look away. You might miss what's watching you back. Now copies of Ray's stories circulate in hidden corners of the web. Stories from Reddit, unlisted videos on Let's Read encrypted threads, shared by rangers and campers alike. Some swear it's fiction, others know better. Especially those who've seen their cat sit in the same spot every night. Especially those whose dreams are being written by someone else. Because once you've been remembered by the watchers, you don't get to forget.